Welcome back to Soccer AI GOAT Podcast.
Yeah.
Get ready, because today we're going deep, really deep, into tactical insights, strategy, performances, and, oh yeah, some super intriguing what-if scenarios. You ready for this?
Absolutely. Let's kick off.
All right, so I'm Jake.
And I'm Sophia.
And together, we are about to unpack one of the most talked about, analyzed, and debated matches in recent memory, the 2022 FIFA World Cup final. Argentina versus France.
I mean, where do we even begin with this one?
Right. Talk about a match for the ages. We're talking a 3-3 draw after extra time. We're talking penalty shootout drama. And of course, we're talking Messi's genius versus the incredible rise of Mbappe.
Yeah, it was a spectacle, that's for sure. A global audience was just glued to their screens.
No doubt. And it's widely considered one of the greatest World Cup finals of all time, and for good reason. But today, our deep dive, and that's what we do here on Soccer AI GOAT, is going beyond the highlights, beyond the individual brilliance, and really dissecting the tactical chess match that unfolded between these two titans of world football.
And I think what makes this deep dive so fascinating, Jake, is the what-if factor. I mean, imagine if some of the other coaching giants out there, the Klopps, the Tuchels, the Contes, the Guardiolas, even Ancelottis or Zidanes of the world, had been leading France that day.
Oh man, the possibilities.
Right. How might their distinct styles, their philosophies, their tactical approaches have altered the course of that match against Scaloni's Argentina?
That's what we're going to unpack. And to do that, we've got some insightful data, some numbers from that final that really highlight where Argentina excelled and where France perhaps could have done things a little differently.
Exactly. And having those data points is going to allow us to explore these what-if scenarios, these tactical hypotheticals, in a much more informed and, I think, super engaging way.
Let's jump right in. First things first, Argentina's winning tactics. One of the key takeaways, and the data backs this up, is their focus on creating and completing what we call in the football world line breaks.
Line breaks, yeah.
So for those who maybe aren't familiar with the term, it basically refers to any pass or dribble that break through the opponent's defensive lines, effectively moving the ball into those dangerous attacking zones, setting up scoring opportunities.
It's about penetration, right? It's not just passing for the sake of passing. It's about purposeful ball movement that disrupts the defensive structure.
Exactly. And Argentina was relentless in their pursuit of line breaks in that final. They attempted, get this, 203 line breaks compared to France's 146.
Wow, that's a pretty significant difference.
It is, and it speaks volumes about Argentina's attacking intent. They were proactive, they were calculated, and they were constantly looking to dissect the French defense with these penetrative passes and coordinated movements off the ball.
And I imagine that also created a lot of chaos and confusion for the French defenders, right? Always having to react, always having to adjust their positioning.
Absolutely. And the impact of those line breaks, it's clear in the stats. Argentina had twice the number of attempts at goal, 20-10, and twice the shots on target, 10-5.
Okay, so they're not just breaking lines, they're creating genuine scoring chances as a result of those breaks.
Precisely. And their ability to get players into dangerous positions in the final third is also reflected in the reception numbers. Argentina had 163 receptions in that crucial area of the pitch, compared to France's 69.
163 to 69, that's a massive gap. It tells you that Argentina was consistently finding ways to get their key attackers on the ball in those areas where they could really hurt the opposition.
Absolutely. And a few players really stood out when it came to creating these line breaks. We're talking Lionel Messi, unsurprisingly, completing 21. Then you have Christian Romero, who's a defender, mind you, also with 22 completed line breaks.
Wait, a defender?
Yep, a defender. Shows you how involved he was in the attacking buildup. And then you have Enzo Fernandez adding another 21 completed line breaks.
So it's not just about individual brilliance. It's a coordinated team effort to move the ball effectively, to break those lines, and to create those scoring chances.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now let's flip the script and talk about Deschamps' France. It's important to acknowledge they weren't without their strengths.
Right. Every team that reaches a World Cup final obviously has a lot of quality.
Precisely. And the data shows that France applied significantly more defensive pressures than Argentina, 409 to 280. They also forced more turnovers, 104 to 87.
Okay, so they were active defensively, clearly trying to disrupt Argentina's rhythm and win the ball back.
Absolutely. But here's the catch. Despite those impressive defensive numbers, they struggled, statistically speaking, in attack, and crucially, in their ability to consistently penetrate Argentina's defensive setup.
So they're winning the ball back, but then what?
That's the million-dollar question. The data suggests they needed to be more effective in their build-up play from the back, taking more calculated risks going forward. increasing their movement off the ball to break down that Argentinian defense, and crucially, converting those defensive turnovers into genuine scoring chances.
Yeah, it's that efficiency in transition, that ability to turn defense into attack that seems to have been missing for France.
Precisely. And this brings us to the really fun part of our deep dive today, the what-if scenarios.
Hmm?
What if France had been led by a different tactical mastermind that day?
The mind boggles.
Right. So let's start with perhaps the most pressing manager in world football, no pun intended, Jurgen Klopp. How do you envision a Klopp-managed France
Mm-hmm.
lining up and approaching this final?
Well, with Klopp, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that relentless, high-intensity pressing game. I mean, his teams are known for swarming the opposition, winning the ball back high up the pitch, and then attacking with speed and directness.
Okay, so imagine a French team, fueled by Klopp's gegenpressing, suffocating Argentina in their own half.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and this is where it gets really tactical, Argentina, with their pacey attackers like Messi and Alvarez, and Messi's uncanny ability to find those gaps with his passing, could a Klopp-led France, with that high defensive line, have been susceptible to quick counterattacks?
Oh, absolutely. That's the risk you run when you press high, you leave space in behind. And against a team with Argentina's attacking quality, that could have been a recipe for disaster.
So the high reward of winning the ball high up the pitch also comes with a high risk if that press is broken.
Precisely. And I think Klopp, being the tactical genius that he is, would be very aware of that risk and would likely implement a very aggressive counterpress as well, aiming to win the ball back immediately if that initial press was bypassed.
All right, so maybe Klopp's all-out pressing isn't the perfect antidote to Scaloni's Argentina. Let's shift gears to another tactical maestro, Thomas Tuchel. Known for his incredibly organized pressing structures and his tactical flexibility. How do you see Tuchel approaching this final?
Um, I think with Tuchel, you'd see a more calculated, more nuanced approach to pressing compared to Klopp's all-out intensity. Tuchel is a master of setting up very specific pressing triggers, aiming to win the ball back in key areas, almost like a well-choreographed dance.
Okay, so less chaotic, more controlled.
Exactly. And tactically, I think he might have employed a more fluid positional system in midfield, trying to disrupt Argentina's passing lanes, winning those midfield battles, and exploiting any space between their lines.
And Tuchel's a master of in-game adjustments, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's known for making subtle but significant tactical tweaks throughout a match, adapting to the opponent's strengths and weaknesses. In a final as tight as this one, that adaptability could have been crucial.
All right, let's bring in another big name. A manager known for his defensive solidity and swift counter-attacking football. Antonio Conte. How might a Conte-led France have looked against Argentina?
With Conte, you know you're going to get a very disciplined, well-drilled defensive unit. His teams are notorious for being incredibly tough to break down.
Compact, organized, frustrating to play against.
Exactly. And offensively, they'd likely focus on absorbing pressure, waiting for their moment, and then hitting Argentina on the break, utilizing the incredible pace of Kylian Mbappe.
So very much a reactive approach, waiting for Argentina to make a mistake.
Yeah, but the question is, would that have been enough to consistently unlock a very well-organized Argentinian defense?
Especially in a World Cup final, where you might expect France to be the team dictating the tempo, taking the initiative.
Right, and that's the potential downside of Conte's system in this particular matchup. It could be seen as too passive, relying too heavily on those moments of individual brilliance rather than a sustained attacking threat.
Okay, let's move on to the philosopher of possession football, the one and only Pep Guardiola. How do you see Pep setting up France against this Argentinian side?
Well, with Pep, it's all about control, about dominating possession, about meticulously passing the ball and probing for weaknesses in the opposition's defense.
Death by a thousand passes.
Pretty much. His positional play would be aimed at patiently dismantling Argentina's defensive structure, waiting for those small openings to appear, and then exploiting them ruthlessly.
But again, like we discussed with Klopp, wouldn't that high press, that relentless pursuit of the ball in Argentina's half, leave France exposed to those lightning-quick counterattacks?
It's definitely a risk, especially against a team with Argentina's quality in transition. But if any team can control a game through possession, it's a Pep Guardiola team.
All right, next up we have a manager known for his tactical pragmatism and his ability to adapt to any situation, Carlo Ancelotti. How do you see Ancelotti approaching this final?
Well, with Ancelotti, I think you'd see a more balanced, adaptable approach. He's a master of analyzing the opponent, identifying their weaknesses, and tailoring his game plan accordingly.
So less about imposing a particular style and more about playing to his team's strengths and exploiting the opponent's vulnerabilities.
Exactly, and he'd likely focus on establishing a strong midfield to counter Argentina's possession game, while also giving his talented attacking players the freedom to express themselves in those crucial moments.
So a more reactive approach, relying on those flashes of individual brilliance to make the difference.
Perhaps, but also a very calculated and intelligent approach, utilizing his team's experience and tactical nous to manage the game effectively.
All right, last but certainly not least, let's talk about the man who needs no introduction, Zinedine Zidane. What kind of tactical setup do you envision from a Zidane-led France?
Well, at Zidane, you know you're going to get a team that's incredibly dangerous on the counterattack. He's also a master motivator, someone who can inspire his players to perform at their very best on the biggest stage.
So, a focus on absorbing pressure, hitting Argentina with speed and precision on the break, and relying on the individual brilliance of players like Mbappe and Griezmann.
Absolutely. And his ability to make those key tactical tweaks, those in-game adjustments to exploit any weaknesses he sees in the opposition, that could also be a major factor.
So we've explored a whole range of tactical possibilities, each with its own strength and potential weaknesses. Based on everything we've discussed, the data, the styles of these different managers, who do you think would have had the best chance of leading France to victory over Scaloni's Argentina?
Honestly, Jake, it's such a tough question. I mean, every manager we've discussed brings something unique to the table. But I think Tuchel, with his tactical flexibility and his focus on counter-pressing, could have really disrupted Argentina's attacking flow.
Okay, so Tuchel's a strong contender.
But then you have Guardiola, who, with his possession-based style, could potentially have starved Argentina of the ball, limited their opportunities.
Right, but with that risk of being hit on the counter.
Exactly. So it's a high-risk, high-reward approach. And then you can't discount Ancelotti's experience and his ability to adapt his tactics to any situation.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how a change in manager, a different tactical approach, could potentially have shifted the entire balance of the match.
It really highlights the crucial role of the coach in top-level football.
Absolutely, and it's also a great reminder that even the smallest details, the subtle tactical tweaks, can have a huge impact on the outcome of a game.
Yeah, and when you're talking about a World Cup final, those small margins can be the difference between victory and defeat.
So to our listeners, we're throwing it back to you. Which coaching change do you think would have most significantly impacted the outcome of that epic final? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to Soccer AI GOAT podcast for more deep dives into the beautiful game.
We'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in.